the conversion of Paul. His name was Saul. He was the most zealous persecutor of Christians. He bare personally the responsibility of killing of not one and two men or women. How do you switch? How do you become something absolutely the opposite of yourself? Is that possible, or is it fiction?
It's recorded in Acts chapter 9, and it sounds like a very interesting children's story. But it's also so big that I don't think that we can completely grasp what is happening here. How can such huge fundamental change happen? And what a difference it's going to make to Christianity.
Paul was a Hellenistic Jew, meaning that Jew born outside of Jerusalem and lived outside of Jerusalem and Judea. He was brought as a boy in Jerusalem and studied under Gamaliel, the most influential Pharisaic teacher at that time, according to the lesson. He became a fanatic Pharisee to the point that he took upon himself the duty to go from synagogue to synagogue and punish Christians and to try to make them and force them to blaspheme. He became so obsessed that he went even in foreign cities after Christians. He arrested Christians and he casted his vote against them to be put to death. There is no question who Saul was, what was his career, what were his beliefs and convictions, where his future leads. Or probably we shouldn't be so much sure of ourselves sometimes.
It's interesting how a Hellenistic Jew, who normally are not so attached to the temple ceremonies or to those aspects of the Mosaic law that were applicable only to the land of Israel, to become such a fundamentalist. Saul was with a very clear allegiance, and on the way to Damascus, he was a shaliach, or an apostle of the Jewish religious authority.
Saul met Jesus from Nazareth in person. On the way to Damascus, he received his call to serve Jesus in person. Yeah, there was light coming from heaven, and there was voice speaking to him from heaven, and he was miraculously blinded. However, Saul was struck to the bottom of his mind and his heart by the words of Jesus. Why do you persecute me? I am Jesus who you're persecuting. It's hard for you to kick against the goads. Did Jesus know something that we don't know? Why is he asking Saul those nonsense questions? Jesus should have known better than us Saul's determination and origin of conviction. Or simply, Jesus knew better and gave him the benefit of the doubt that probably Saul did not really comprehend what he was doing. The lesson even briefly mentions that there was a doubt has been flickering in Saul's mind, but he never found the strength to embrace it. And this was the moment. Now was the time. He had all the reasons to accept defeat and surrender to 180 degrees of transformation.
Our journeys are very individual. What makes us to take a decision for God is very different. But there is something that fills a void, that answer maybe our even unformulated questions. It may be a very long process, but in a blink of a second, something happens and we know that it clicked. We know that we have found it. Probably at a most unexpected place. Probably where we were sure that it will never be. Probably where we have focused all our energy against. But in a special encounter with Jesus, the meaning of life changes.
After the initial conviction of our mind and our conscience happens, thereafter comes a battle with all that we know, with all that we have learned, with all that we have experienced in the past, and with all that we have created relationships with from the past. And it was not different for Paul, who had to face his fears and his weaknesses and his questions and doubts. And he spent 3 years in Arabia, for that matter. He had to face again, after that, the believers in Damascus, who he was supposed to kill initially. This time not as a persecutor, but as a proclaimer of Jesus Christ as the Messiah. After that, he had to go back and face the same Jewish leaders in Jerusalem who sent him on a mission to capture more Christians. Transformation isn't easy. It's painful and it takes guts, but it's also a place of humility and acceptance of my inability to control the outcome. It was Jesus who urged Paul to leave Jerusalem to avoid imprisonment. Jesus is worthy of our surrender because he can get us through.
Can we trust the transformation in a person who caused us harm? Can we trust someone who raped, tortured, killed a loved one? Only God's love and mercy can cover such experience. It's a process. For a long time, there was doubt that post-conversion could actually be a great undercover story to infiltrate and destroy Christianity from within. But I'm trying to imagine the faces of the Jews who were expecting Saul so that they can help him to get rid of these imposters of the truth. Now listening to him, trying to convince them that this Jesus is indeed the way and the Messiah. Unbelievable.
Paul spent 15 days in Jerusalem before he withdrew for a couple of years. There were obstacles from the church and its leadership for him to be accepted. And it's with no surprise to me that it's another Hellenistic Jew with the name of Barnabas who introduces him back again to the community. It seems that Paul continued his strong connection with Hellenistic Jews and new believers, Gentiles, in his future adventures, confirming that although he studied in the schools of Jerusalem, he understood very well the culture and the potential of salvation of people who were like him, unfit and unqualified by definition for salvation.
Something big was about to happen, but for now, it's confusing time, with many amazements and need for adjustment. Time for more opening for the Holy Spirit and for trust.
We will continue next week with the ministry of Peter.